This is the K+F Concept Mini V-mount battery with the model number BP-VL99. And it has a capacity of 99 watt-hours, so it can be carried on a plane. It weighs 541 grams, and considering its capacity, it means 5.46 grams for every watt-hour of capacity. So if you want to compare this battery to another battery, then keep that number in mind, 5.46 grams per each watt-hour of capacity. In terms of size, it's 10.1 centimeters in this orientation, and its width is 7.3 centimeters, and its thickness is 5.2 centimeters. So it's a really small V-mount battery for its capacity. And it has an OLED display, which is angled at 45 degrees, which shows the battery status, the time remaining, the percentage of charge remaining, voltage indication, and the status of the USB-A and the USB-C ports. In terms of ports, it has the standard BP interface, so you can use this directly on cameras that support it, like Z cams. So all the newer versions of the Z cam cameras seem to support V-mount batteries as opposed to NPF batteries. And also, if you have a V-mount battery plate, that will take the same thing. So if you take this V-mount battery plate, you can plug it in there and use it with any device that you want. So it has two deep tap ports, one on each side. So there's one on this side and one on the opposite side. So one on the left and one on the right. And the D-tap ports are both in and out, so you can use them to charge the battery, but you can also use them to run your devices off it or charge anything else that you wanted. Aside from the two D-tap ports, it also has USB-A and USB-C, so these are on top of the battery. So there's one USB-A port and one USB-C port. And the USB-C port is both in and out, whereas the USB-A port is only out. So if you want to charge the battery, you can use the USB-C port to charge this V-mount battery, but you can also use the USB-C port to charge your phone or run a camera off it or a light or whatever else accepts USB-C. And in the manual, there's details about what voltages each of these ports provide. The two things that I want to mention is that the USB-A port does provide quick charge version 2, so it does provide 5 volts at 3 amps. And the reason I mention this is because a lot of dummy batteries require 5 volts at 3 amp or at least 5 volts at 2.4 amps in order to be able to run a camera effectively. So there's no problem with that. And also the USB-C does support power delivery version 3, so it does support providing at least 9 volts and 3 amps. And the reason I mention 9 volts and 3 amps is because I have a camera which requires that, which is the EM1X. So that's why I was personally concerned with that voltage. But it actually does provide a higher voltage than that, so you can even have 20 volts at 3.25 amps. So the USB-C port provides 65 watts of power. So you can use this both for cameras and camera equipment, but you can also use it as a power bank for charging a phone, a laptop, or whatever else you want, since it has the USB ports, which you can use it to charge it itself and also charge other devices. It doesn't have any barrel connector ports, so I think this is a compromise between whether you want barrel connectors or you want the battery to remain small and light. Personally, I don't think that's a problem because you can use a cable like this, which is a trigger cable, and you put in USB-C into this and then the barrel connector into whatever device you're using. In fact, let me show this. So this is the EM1X, and I'm going to show the screen here so you can see when it actually does come on. And I'm going to plug the barrel connector into the camera. So there's the barrel connection for the camera. So I'm going to plug this in. And then the other side of the connection, I'm going to plug it into the V-mount battery. And here you can see that the light on the camera came on, which means it's charging the batteries in the camera. But what I want to do is turn on the camera to see whether it actually works. Okay, so there you can see that the battery icon has disappeared on the camera, which means the camera is now running from the V-mount battery using a trigger cable from USB-C to barrel connectors. So if I unplug this from the camera, you can see that it switches off. So, and it's giving us the battery empty sign. So that confirms that it was actually running off of this V-mount battery. So the point of this demonstration is to actually just show that there's really no difference between having a USB-C to barrel connector trigger cable or whether you actually have a barrel connected directly from the V-mount battery. But the only thing is to remember that this is a trigger cable, not a regular cable. So when you want to buy something like this, just make sure you buy a trigger cable and not just a random USB-C to barrel connector cable. And what these trigger cables essentially do is they negotiate the voltage between the two devices, so between the V-mount battery and the camera or whatever peripheral you're using. So they won't actually just put in whatever charge into the other device. So each trigger cable has specific details about what voltage and what current it can actually provide. I don't know if can you see this there? So this one is 9 volts and 5 amps. So the camera only needs 9 volts and 3 amps, but this can provide more, so that's not a problem for the current, because the camera would only draw 3 amps anyway, or probably even less. So the V-mount battery has a button here, so if you press this, the screen will come on, and you should be able to see the information about the battery. And if you also had cables plugged into the USB ports, then you would see how much battery was remaining and what the consumptions were. So the exact details that it provides is the battery status, the time remaining, and percentage of charge time remaining, voltage indication, and status of the USB-A and USB-C ports. And the screen turns off automatically, so it doesn't waste the battery capacity. There's no eyelet on the battery, so if you wanted to connect a string or anything to it and hang it from somewhere, but what you can do is have something like a V-mount battery plate. So these are the simple plates without any electronics in them. So you can connect it to this plate and then connect this plate to a cage or wherever else you want to mount it to. And alternatively, you can use these even smaller plates. So there's no electronics again in these ones, but you can connect the V-mount battery here and have something like this to connect it to a monopod or a tripod and then connect this onto it. So this is how you could have it off camera. So if you don't have a camera rig, you can still use the V-mount battery on your tripod leg or monopod leg and then run a cable from the V-mount battery to your camera. In my opinion, there are a few advantages to this battery. So first of all, it's relatively small and light for its capacity, so it's quite portable. And the other thing I really like about this battery is that the OLED display is at a 45-degree angle. So if you have the camera at waist level, you can look down at the screen and still see what it's actually saying. And also if you have it at eye level, where it's further up, so opposite to eye, you can still see it from this direction what the readings are. So one of the things I see with a lot of V-mount batteries as well as for wireless microphones is that either the screen is flat on top or it's on the side. And with those options, it's good for one, but completely useless for the other position. So if you have it on top, it's obviously really good if you're looking down on it and you have the camera and your equipment at waist level. But if your equipment is at eye level, then having it on top is obviously not practical because you can't see anything. But having it on this side would be good. Whereas if you have it at 45-degree angle, which is the case for this battery, it doesn't matter where your equipment is mounted, whether it's at eye level or waist level, you can still see the readings on it. So I really like that about this battery. So if I was to compare this to other V-mount batteries, K+F does actually have a different V-mount battery, which is also 99 watt hours in capacity. But that one supports up to 100 watts, which is obviously better than 65 watts, which this one can provide. But the disadvantage of that one is that it's bigger and slightly heavier. So if you want something that provides 100 watts, there is an alternative, but it is slightly bigger and slightly heavier. So keep that in mind. Just because a battery has certain features, it would probably always be a compromise. What you gain in one area, you lose in another area. But for me, this one is lighter and smaller, which is obviously a benefit in my opinion. Another comparison would be against NP-F batteries. So the thing with NP-F batteries is that they're not as flexible as V-mount batteries in terms of being able to attach them to V-mount plates and run multiple things off them. So in particular, I would say NP-F batteries have a smaller capacity. So for example, this one I have here is around 50 watt hours, whereas this V-mount battery is around 100 watt hours. So twice as much, and the size difference isn't huge, but the V-mount battery allows a bigger draw, so you can have 65 watts going out of it if you want to run multiple devices off the same battery. And they have more ports as well, which is also useful, and they're compatible with V-mount plates, so you have a lot of options in terms of powering your kit. So I generally try to avoid NPF batteries, but some equipment use NPF batteries, so sometimes you just can't avoid NPF batteries and you have to use them regardless. So there's one option for that, and you can get an adapter which plugs into the D-tap or USB ports, and it actually attaches into an NPF receiver. So what that means is if you have something mounted on top of your camera, you don't actually need to put in NPF batteries. You just have the adapter going from the V-mount battery to that device, and that keeps your whole rig substantially lighter because you don't need the NPF batteries on top, which would make your kit top heavy. Anyway, let me know if you have any questions about this V-mount battery, or if you want me to run a particular test on it or demonstrate something with it, and I'll do it in a follow-up video. I'm going to include the unboxing just so that you know what actually comes in the box. So there's this safety leaflet and the user manual. And then there's a piece of foam, and this is the battery itself. So I think I have to shake it out. And that's all that comes in the box. So if we just look at the manual, there isn't any specific information in here. So it tells you what ports are there and what you should do and what you shouldn't do. And also tells you the voltages for the various ports. So that might be interesting. And then the same thing in other languages.